The blood on her dress had long dried to a rust-colored stain by the time Rose Fairmont stumbled into Gunnison, Colorado on that bitter October morning in 1878. Her shoes worn through at the soles, and her stomach hollow with 3 days of nothing but creek water. She had believed the men at the mining camp when they promised her work as a cook, had trusted their smiles when they said a woman alone needed protection in these mountains, and she had learned too late that desperation made a person blind to the wolves dressed in human skin. Rose collapsed against the wooden post outside the general store, her vision swimming as the high altitude and exhaustion finally claimed what little strength remained in her 22-year-old body. She had walked 40 miles through the Rockies to escape, leaving behind everything except the knowledge that some men saw a desperate woman as nothing more than prey. The mining camp foreman had kept her papers, her small savings, even the locket with her mother's portrait, claiming she owed them for room and board while they worked her 16 hours a day and tried to force her into arrangements no decent woman would accept. "Miss, you need help." A deep voice cut through the fog in her mind, and Rose forced her eyes open to see a man crouching beside her, concern etched across a weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He was perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair and eyes the color of good whiskey, dressed in the practical clothes of a working rancher. "I am fine," Rose managed, though they both knew it was a lie. Her hands were blistered and bleeding, her face was gaunt, and she swayed even sitting down. The man studied her for a moment, then stood and disappeared into the store. Rose closed her eyes, fighting back tears of exhaustion and shame. She had come west from Ohio 6 months ago after her father died and the bank took their house, believing the newspaper advertisements about opportunities in Colorado. She had been a fool. The man returned with a canteen and a wrapped sandwich. "Drink slowly," he instructed, kneeling again and offering the water. "You look like you have not eaten in days." Rose wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain some scrap of dignity, but her body betrayed her, and she reached for the canteen with shaking hands. The water was cold and pure, and she had to force herself not to gulp it down. The man waited patiently, his expression kind but not pitying, which somehow made it worse. "Thank you," she whispered when she finally lowered the canteen. "I will repay you when I can. No need." He nodded toward the sandwich. "Eat that. Then we can talk about what brought you to town looking like you have been through hell itself." Something in his straightforward manner loosened the tight knot in Rose's chest, and as she ate the sandwich with as much restraint as she could muster, she found herself telling him everything. The words came out in a rush, about the advertisement for a cook at the Silver Point mining camp, about arriving to find the situation was nothing like promised, about the foreman who kept her documents and tried to force himself into her tent at night while the other men laughed, about stealing away before dawn 3 days ago with nothing but the clothes on her back. The man's expression darkened as she spoke, his jaw tightening, but he let her finish before he said anything. "My name is Aaron Crawford," he told her when she fell silent. "I run a cattle ranch about 8 miles north of here. I came to town for supplies, but it seems fate had other plans for this trip." "I do not want charity, Mr. Crawford," Rose said, straightening her spine despite her exhaustion. "I just need to find honest work. I can cook, clean, so keep accounts. I am educated and willing to work hard." "I am sure you are." Aaron stood and offered his hand to help her up. "But right now you need a meal and a place to rest. My ranch has both. We can discuss work arrangements after you have recovered enough to think straight." Rose hesitated, her recent experience making her wary of any man's offers, no matter how genuine they seemed. Aaron must have read her thoughts because he added, "My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen is a formidable woman who will not let anyone bother you. She is also the best cook in 3 counties, and she has been after me to hire someone to help with the house. This might work out well for both of us." There was something in his steady gaze that made Rose want to trust him, or perhaps she simply had no other choice. She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet, trying not to notice how strong and warm his grip felt, or how her heart gave an unexpected flutter when he smiled at her. Aaron's wagon was loaded with supplies, and he helped her onto the bench seat before climbing up beside her. The ride out of Gunnison took them through stands of golden aspen trees and across meadows where cattle grazed beneath the massive peaks of the Rockies. Despite her wariness, Rose found herself relaxing slightly as Aaron pointed out landmarks and told her about the ranch he had built over the past 5 years. "I came out from Missouri after the war," he explained as the horses pulled them up a winding road. "Wanted to start fresh somewhere the land was still open and a man could build something that mattered. Bought 160 acres initially, and I have been adding to it when I can. I run about 300 head of cattle now, plus horses." "That must be a lot of work for one person," Rose observed. "I have 3 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, and Mrs. Chen keeps the main house running. We all work together during roundup and branding, but otherwise it is a manageable operation." He glanced at her. "Truth is, the house has gotten too big for Mrs. Chen to handle alone. She is not as young as she used to be, though she would skin me alive for saying so. If you are serious about wanting work, I could genuinely use help with the cooking, cleaning, and mending. The pay would be fair, and you would have your own room with a lock on the door." That last detail, stated so matter-of-factly, told Rose that Aaron understood her fears. She found herself wanting to cry again, but this time from relief rather than despair. "I would be grateful for the opportunity, Mr. Crawford." "Aaron," he corrected. "We are not formal folk out here." The ranch house appeared as they crested a hill, a solid 2-story structure built from local timber with a wide porch and stone chimney. Several outbuildings clustered nearby, including a large barn, a bunkhouse, and what looked like a smokehouse. It was simple but well-maintained, the kind of place that spoke of steady work and honest pride. A small, elderly Chinese woman emerged from the house as they pulled up, her sharp eyes taking in Rose's bedraggled state in a single glance. She unleashed a torrent of words at Aaron in a mixture of English and Cantonese, clearly scolding him for something, though her hands were gentle as she helped Rose down from the wagon. "This is Mrs. Chen," Aaron said with obvious affection. "She is saying I should have brought you straight to the house instead of making you sit in the wagon, and also that I am a foolish man who knows nothing about caring for people, which is probably true." Mrs. Chen snorted and led Rose toward the house, still muttering. Rose glanced back at Aaron, who gave her an encouraging nod before turning to unload the wagon. Inside, the house was clean and comfortable, furnished with sturdy pieces that showed care if not luxury. Mrs. Chen guided Rose upstairs to a small bedroom with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the mountains. "You rest," Mrs. Chen said firmly, her English accented but clear. "I bring food, hot water. Tomorrow we talk about work. Today you heal." Rose wanted to protest that she should make herself useful immediately, but her body had other ideas. As soon as Mrs. Chen left, she sank onto the bed and was asleep before she could even remove her ruined shoes. She woke hours later to the smell of something delicious and the sound of voices downstairs. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of orange and purple. Someone had left a pitcher of water and a basin on the washstand, along with a clean dress that looked like it might fit. Rose washed as best she could and changed, grateful beyond words for the simple kindness. Downstairs, she found Aaron and Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, along with 3 ranch hands who introduced themselves as Tom, Miguel, and Red. All 3 men were polite and respectful, touching their hat brims and then returning their attention to their meals without staring. The kitchen was warm and filled with the scent of beef stew and fresh bread. "Come, sit," Mrs. Chen commanded, ladling stew into a bowl. "You eat properly now." Rose obeyed, settling at the large table. Aaron sat across from her, and as they ate, the conversation flowed easily around her. The men discussed cattle, weather, and plans for the coming week. No one pressed her with questions or made her feel uncomfortable. It was so different from the mining camp that Rose felt tension she had not realized she was carrying slowly begin to ease from her shoulders. After dinner, the ranch hands returned to the bunkhouse, and Mrs. Chen began clearing dishes. Rose jumped up to help, and together they worked in comfortable silence while Aaron reviewed some papers at the table. It felt almost domestic, almost normal, and Rose realized she had not felt safe like this since before her father died. "Tomorrow, I am going back to Gunnison," Aaron said, looking up from his papers. "I need to file some claims at the land office. Rose, if you want, we can stop by the sheriff's office and report what happened at Silver Point." Rose's hand stilled on the dish she was washing. "What good would that do? They took my papers. I have no proof of anything." "Maybe not, but Sheriff Williams is a good man, and he should know if the mining camps are running that kind of operation. Other women might answer those same advertisements." Aaron's voice was firm. "You do not have to do it alone. I will stand with you." The offer was so unexpected, so generous, that Rose had to turn away to hide the tears that sprang to her eyes. She had been alone for so long, fighting so hard, that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone on her side. The next morning dawned clear and cold, and after a breakfast that Mrs. Chen insisted Rose eat every bite of, she and Aaron rode back to Gunnison. The sheriff's office was a small building on the main street, and Sheriff Williams turned out to be a graying man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Rose told her story again, and this time it felt less like shame and more like justice. Aaron added details about the mining camp's location and reputation, and the sheriff took careful notes. "This is not the first complaint I have heard about Silver Point," Sheriff Williams said when she finished, "but it is the first from someone who managed to get away willing to talk about it. Most women are too scared, and I cannot blame them. I will look into it, Miss Fairmont. In the meantime, you are safe at the Crawford Ranch. Aaron here runs one of the most respectable operations in the county." After they left the sheriff's office, Aaron took Rose to the general store and, despite her protests, bought her 2 new dresses, sturdy boots, a warm coat, and various necessities. "Consider it an advance on your wages," he said when she objected. "You cannot work properly without proper clothes." Over the following weeks, Rose settled into life at the ranch. She and Mrs. Chen developed an easy partnership, dividing the household tasks and cooking meals for the ranch hands. Rose discovered she had a talent for organization, and soon she had taken over managing the household accounts and ordering supplies. Aaron was grateful for the help, and Rose took pride in making herself genuinely useful. But more than the work, Rose found herself drawn to the man who had saved her. Aaron was quiet but not cold, hardworking but never harsh. He treated his ranch hands fairly, paid them well, and listened when they had concerns. He was patient with the animals and respectful to Mrs. Chen. Rose caught herself watching him as he worked with the horses or discussed ranch business, admiring the capable way he handled everything. One evening in late November, a sudden snowstorm trapped everyone in the main house. The ranch hands had been working close by and sought shelter there, rather than risk the trek back to the bunkhouse in the blinding snow. Mrs. Chen made hot coffee and beef stew while the wind howled outside, and they all gathered in the large front room where Aaron built up the fire. As the evening wore on, someone produced a harmonica, and Miguel turned out to have a fine singing voice. They sang old songs and told stories, and Rose felt something in her chest loosen further. She glanced up to find Aaron watching her from across the room, his expression warm, and their eyes met and held for a long moment before Mrs. Chen demanded another song. Later, after the storm had passed and the hands had returned to the bunkhouse, Rose helped Mrs. Chen clean up. The older woman gave her a knowing look. "He is a good man, that one," she said quietly. "Lonely, though, has been since he came here." Rose felt her cheeks heat. "I am sure I do not know what you mean." Mrs. Chen laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "You are both young, both alone. Both hurt by life, but not broken. These things have a way of working out." Rose thought about those words as she lay in bed that night, listening to the house settle around her. She had been so focused on survival, on escaping the trap the mining camp had become, that she had not allowed herself to think about anything beyond the next day. But now, safe and warm, she let herself acknowledge the growing feeling she had for Aaron. He had used his resources to help her when she was desperate and vulnerable, asking nothing in return. He had given her not just shelter but dignity, treating her as a capable person rather than a victim. The feeling was terrifying and wonderful all at once. Winter deepened, and the ranch settled into its cold weather rhythms. There was still work to be done, caring for the animals and maintaining the buildings, but the pace was slower. Aaron spent more time in the house, working on his books and planning for spring. He and Rose often found themselves talking late into the evening after Mrs. Chen had gone to bed, discussing everything from politics to philosophy to their childhoods. Rose learned that Aaron had lost his entire family during the war, his parents and 2 younger sisters to disease when he was just 19. He had joined the army afterward, more out of having nowhere else to go than from patriotic fervor, and had spent 5 hard years learning that violence solved nothing. Coming west had been his way of trying to build something instead of destroy. "I wanted land of my own, a place where I could make decisions and live with the consequences," he told her one night as they sat by the fire. "I wanted something clean and honest after all that blood and chaos." Rose understood that impulse deeply. She had come west for similar reasons, running from debt and disappointment, hoping to find a fresh start. That it had nearly destroyed her was not the fault of Colorado but of cruel men who preyed on desperation. "You succeeded," she said softly. "This ranch, what you have built here, it is good and honest." Aaron met her eyes, and Rose saw something in his gaze that made her heart race. "It is better now that you are here," he said quietly. "This house was just a building before. You have made it a home." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Rose knew she should look away, should maintain some professional distance, but she could not make herself break eye contact. Slowly, giving her every chance to refuse, Aaron reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused from work, and his thumb traced gentle circles on her skin. "Rose, I know you have been through hell," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I know you have every reason not to trust any man. But I need you to know that what I feel for you goes beyond gratitude or respect, though I feel both those things. Somewhere along the way this winter, I fell in love with you." Rose's breath caught. She had hoped, had wondered, but hearing the words spoken aloud made them real and immediate. "Aaron, I am afraid," she admitted. "The last time I trusted someone, I nearly lost everything. I know." His grip on her hand tightened slightly. I am not asking you to trust me completely right now. I am just asking you to give me a chance to prove I am different. Let me court you properly the way you deserve. Let me show you that not all men are wolves." Rose looked into his honest, open face and made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff and growing wings at the same time. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you may court me." The smile that broke across Aaron's face was like sunrise, and when he raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, Rose felt something break free inside her chest. Hope, she realized. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt genuine hope for the future. Their courtship unfolded slowly through the remainder of that winter, as careful and deliberate as Aaron was in everything else. He brought her wildflowers that somehow bloomed even in the snow, shared his favorite books from his small library, taught her to ride the gentler horses so she could see more of the ranch. They walked together in the clear, cold evenings, bundled in coats and scarves, talking about their dreams and fears. Aaron never pushed for more than Rose was ready to give. He seemed to understand instinctively when she needed space and when she needed reassurance. It was so different from the grabbing, demanding attitude of the men at the mining camp that Rose sometimes felt tears prick her eyes from the sheer relief of being treated with respect. Mrs. Chen watched their courtship with obvious approval, occasionally leaving them alone with what Rose suspected were manufactured errands. The ranch hands, too, seemed pleased, treating Rose with even more careful courtesy now that it was clear Aaron's intentions were serious. In late February, a letter arrived from Sheriff Williams. He had raided the Silver Point mining camp with a federal marshal, finding not only evidence of the labor abuses Rose had reported, but also several other women being held in conditions that bordered on slavery. The foreman and 2 other men had been arrested, and the camp had been shut down pending investigation. The letter included Rose's papers and her small savings, everything that had been taken from her. Rose sat at the kitchen table, her hands shaking as she held the documents that represented her identity, her freedom. Aaron sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder, solid and supportive. "It is over," she said, hardly believing it. "It is truly over." "You were brave to come forward," Aaron told her. "Those other women are free because of you." Rose had not thought of it that way, but the idea that her testimony had helped others eased something painful inside her. She had been a victim, yes, but she had also fought back. She had survived and helped ensure the men who hurt her faced justice. That meant something. Spring came to the high country in a rush of snowmelt and green grass, and with it came renewed energy to the ranch. Cattle that had wintered in the lower pastures needed to be moved up to summer grazing. Fences needed mending, foals were born, and there was more work than daylight to do it in. Rose helped where she could, learning the rhythms of ranch life and discovering she enjoyed the physical labor and the satisfaction of seeing immediate results from her efforts. On a warm evening in late April, Aaron asked her to go riding with him up to a high meadow he wanted to show her. They rode for an hour as the sun began its slow descent, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. The meadow Aaron led her to was scattered with wildflowers, and a small stream ran through it, catching the last light. "I come up here when I need to think," Aaron said as they dismounted. "It is the most peaceful place I know." They walked together through the flowers, and Rose felt the beauty of the moment settle into her bones. This was what she had dreamed of when she came west, this sense of space and possibility. That she was sharing it with a man she loved made it perfect. "Rose, I need to ask you something," Aaron said, stopping and turning to face her. He took both her hands in his, and Rose saw nervousness in his eyes for the first time since she had known him. These past months have been the happiest of my life. You have brought light and warmth to this ranch and to my heart. I know we have not known each other long, but I also know my own mind. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you every single day." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a simple gold ring set with a small, clear stone. "This was my mother's. It is not fancy, but it is real, and it has been kept safe through everything. Rose Fairmont, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Rose looked at the ring, then at Aaron's face, and felt tears of joy spill down her cheeks. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and sure. "Yes, I will marry you." Aaron slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a tenderness that made Rose feel cherished and safe and loved all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling so widely their cheeks hurt. They were married 3 weeks later in Gunnison's small church, with Mrs. Chen, the ranch hands, Sheriff Williams, and half the town in attendance. Rose wore a new dress of soft blue fabric that Aaron had ordered from Denver, and she carried wildflowers from the high meadow. Aaron stood at the altar in his best suit, looking nervous and happy and more handsome than any man had a right to be. As Rose walked down the aisle toward him, she thought about how far she had come from that desperate morning when she had stumbled into town, broken and alone. She thought about the cruel men who had tried to use her desperation against her, and about the good man who had instead used his resources to help her rebuild her life. She thought about justice and kindness, and the unexpected ways love could grow from the darkest circumstances. When Aaron took her hand and they spoke their vows, Rose meant every word with her entire heart. This was not the future she had imagined when she came west, but it was better than anything she could have dreamed. She had found not just safety or security, but true partnership and love. The wedding celebration lasted well into the evening, with food and music and dancing in the churchyard. As the sun set and the stars began to emerge, Aaron and Rose slipped away, riding back to the ranch under a sky full of light. Mrs. Chen had decorated the house with flowers and made sure they had privacy, taking a room at her daughter's house in town for the night. In their bedroom, with moonlight streaming through the windows and the mountains standing guard outside, Aaron and Rose came together as husband and wife. He was gentle and patient, mindful of her past trauma, and Rose found that with him she could let go of her fear and embrace the pleasure and intimacy she had thought might be forever tainted. In Aaron's arms, she felt truly safe for the first time since her father had died, and the act became not just physical but a profound declaration of trust and love. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Rose's head on Aaron's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for seeing me when I was broken and believing I could be whole again." Aaron kissed the top of her head. "You were never broken, Rose. Hurt, yes. Treated badly, absolutely, but never broken. You survived, you fought back, you rebuilt. That takes a strength most people never have to find. I am the lucky one. You chose to trust me despite everything, and I will never take that gift for granted." Rose lifted her head to kiss him again, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies and hearts, and when they finally slept, it was wrapped around each other, safe and complete. The first year of their marriage brought both challenges and joys. A late spring blizzard killed several calves, and they had to work around the clock to save the rest of the herd. Rose proved herself invaluable during the crisis, working alongside the men without complaint, and Aaron fell in love with her all over again, watching her determination and skill. Summer brought good weather and better prices for their cattle. They hired 2 more ranch hands to help with the expanded operation, and Rose took over managing all the ranch accounts, discovering she had a head for business. Together, she and Aaron made plans to buy more land and increase their herd. In late summer, Rose began to feel unwell in the mornings. Mrs. Chen took one look at her and announced with great satisfaction that a baby was coming. Rose and Aaron were overjoyed, and Aaron became almost comically protective, trying to prevent Rose from doing any heavy work. Rose tolerated his fussing with amusement and love, knowing it came from care rather than control. Their son was born in March of 1880, delivered by the doctor from Gunnison with Mrs. Chen acting as midwife. The labor was long and difficult, and Aaron wore a path in the floorboards downstairs pacing, but when he finally held his son for the first time, tears streamed down his face unchecked. "He is perfect," Aaron whispered, looking at Rose with such love and awe that she felt her heart might burst. "You are perfect. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas Aaron Crawford, and he had his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. Rose had never known love could expand this way, encompassing not just Aaron but this tiny person they had created together. Watching Aaron with their son, seeing his gentleness and patience, erased the last shadows of her past trauma. This was what family should be: love and safety and mutual support. As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Rose and Aaron's ranch prospered. They bought an additional 300 acres and built a new, larger barn. The cattle herd grew to over 500 head, and they began raising horses as well, developing a reputation for quality stock. Rose managed the business side while Aaron oversaw the daily operations, and together they made a formidable team. Other women in the area, learning of Rose's past and how she had helped shut down the mining camp, began to come to her for advice and assistance. Rose found herself becoming an advocate for women in difficult situations, using the ranch's resources and her own experience to help them find safe work and housing. Aaron supported her efforts completely, even offering jobs to several women on their expanding ranch. In 1882, Rose gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Helen. She was a calm, happy baby, and Thomas, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his little sister. Aaron proved just as devoted a father the second time, and their family felt complete. The ranch house was always full of life now, with children's laughter and the sounds of a working household. Mrs. Chen, though officially retired, still came by regularly to dote on the children and offer her opinions on how everything should be run. The ranch hands had become like family, often joining them for Sunday dinners and celebrations. One evening, when Thomas was 5 and Sarah was 3, Rose and Aaron sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard while the sun set behind the mountains. Aaron had his arm around Rose's shoulders, and she leaned into his solid warmth, feeling profoundly grateful for the life they had built together. "You ever think about how we met?" Aaron asked quietly. "How close we came to never finding each other?" Rose nodded. "I think about it often. About how my desperation led me to make terrible choices that nearly destroyed me. But I also think about how it led me here to you. I do not know if I believe in fate, but I believe in choosing to see the good in people, even after you have seen the worst." "Those men at the mining camp tried to break you," Aaron said, his voice rough with old anger. "They used your desperation as a weapon, but you survived them, and then you trusted me enough to let me help you. That took more courage than anything I have ever done." Rose turned to kiss him softly. "You did not just help me, Aaron. You gave me back my life, my dignity, my hope. You used your resources not to control me but to lift me up. You showed me that strength can be gentle and power can be kind. You loved me when I was certain I would never be able to trust anyone again." "And I will love you until my last breath," Aaron promised, pulling her closer. "You and our children are everything to me. This ranch, everything we have built, it all means something because I get to share it with you." They sat together as the stars emerged, watching their children play, and Rose felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. The scars from her past would never fully disappear, but they had become part of her story rather than the whole of it. She had survived cruelty and found love. She had been helped and learned to help others. She had taken the broken pieces of her life and built something beautiful. Years passed in the easy rhythm of ranch life. Thomas grew into a thoughtful, intelligent boy who loved the horses and showed signs of having his father's patient skill with animals. Sarah was adventurous and bold, always climbing trees and demanding to help with ranch work, despite her mother's concerns. In 1886, Rose gave birth to their third child, another son they named Michael James, who proved to be the most cheerful baby any of them had ever seen. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Aaron and Rose became pillars of the community, known for their fair dealing and generous hearts. They established a fund to help women coming west find honest work, and the ranch became known as a place where a person in need could get a fair chance. Rose never forgot where she had come from or how easily desperation could lead a person into danger. She worked tirelessly to ensure other women did not face the same exploitation she had endured. Aaron supported every effort, often saying that Rose's compassion and determination made him a better man. In the spring of 1889, when Thomas was 9, Sarah 7, and Michael 3, the family made a trip to Denver to see the progress of the growing city. It was the children's first time seeing a place larger than Gunnison, and their excitement was infectious. Aaron held Michael while Rose walked with the older two, pointing out sights and explaining how cities worked. That evening, as they sat in their hotel room with the children asleep, Aaron pulled Rose onto the small balcony to look at the city lights. "When I first came west, I never imagined this," he said, gesturing to encompass not just the city but their whole life. "I thought I would run cattle, maybe make enough to be comfortable, and die alone on my ranch. I never dreamed I would have a wife I loved more than life itself and 3 beautiful children. I never imagined building something that mattered beyond just me." Rose leaned into him, watching the city lights twinkle below. "I came west running from failure and loss," she said softly. "I was so desperate I made terrible choices and nearly paid the ultimate price. But somehow, out of all that darkness I found you, found this life, found happiness I did not know was possible." "Those cruel men tried to destroy you," Aaron said, echoing words from years before. "But you were stronger than they ever imagined. And when you needed help, when your desperation was at its worst, I am grateful I was there to use what I had to help you. Not because I am some kind of hero, but because you deserve to be helped. Every person deserves that." Rose turned to face him fully, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "You are my hero, Aaron Crawford. You saved my life, but more than that, you showed me life was worth living again. You gave me safety and love and a future I never thought I would have. And every single day, I thank God that I stumbled into Gunnison that morning and that you were the one who found me." Aaron kissed her then, deep and tender, and Rose felt the same flutter in her heart she had felt that very first day, when a kind stranger had offered her water and hope. Some loves grew slowly, she had learned, built on trust and respect and shared experience. Their love had started in her darkest moment and grown stronger every day since, rooted in his goodness and her courage, in his resources and her resilience. They returned to the ranch a week later, and life continued in its comfortable patterns. The children grew and learned, the ranch prospered, and Rose and Aaron's love deepened with each passing year. They faced challenges, as all families do: droughts and harsh winters, sick cattle and broken equipment, the normal scrapes and illnesses of childhood, but they faced them together, and that made all the difference. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Aaron surprised Rose with a trip back to the high meadow where he had proposed. They rode up as they had before, though this time they had to go slowly to accommodate Rose, who was pregnant with their 4th child. The meadow was just as beautiful, filled with wildflowers and the sound of running water. 10 years, Aaron said as they stood together in the place where their future had begun. The best 10 years of my life. You have given me everything, Rose. A home, a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. I love you more today than I did when I asked you to marry me, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. Rose wiped away happy tears. I was so broken when you found me, she said. I had lost faith in everything, in people, in justice, in the possibility of good things. But you believed in me when I could not believe in myself. You used your strength to protect me, your resources to help me rebuild, your love to heal me. You turned my desperation into hope and my fear into love. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that I found you. They kissed there in the meadow, surrounded by wildflowers and mountains, and Rose thought about how far she had come from that desperate woman who had collapsed outside a general store. She had been used and hurt by men who saw her vulnerability as an opportunity. But she had also been saved and loved by a man who saw her humanity and chose to help without asking for anything in return. That was the difference, she realized. Cruel people saw desperation as weakness to exploit. Good people saw it as a call to help. Aaron had answered that call, and in doing so had given Rose back her life and her future. Their 4th child, a daughter named Emma Kate, was born that winter, healthy and strong. Thomas, now 10, was old enough to be a real help around the ranch. Sarah, at 8, had started learning ranch accounts from her mother and showed a head for numbers. Michael, at 4, followed his father everywhere, chattering constantly and asking endless questions that Aaron answered with infinite patience. The house was chaotic and full and perfect. Rose looked around her table at dinner time, seeing her husband and children, Mrs. Chen still offering unsolicited opinions, the ranch hands who had become family, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This was everything she had lost when her father died and the bank took their house. This was everything she had searched for coming west. This was home. As the years continued to pass, the Crawford Ranch became one of the most successful in Colorado. Aaron and Rose's children grew strong and capable, learning the value of hard work and honest dealing. Thomas eventually took over much of the daily ranch operations, showing his father's skill and patience. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son and started her own successful horse breeding program. Michael became a veterinarian, one of the first in the region, and Emma followed her mother's footsteps, advocating for women's rights and working to ensure no woman faced the exploitation Rose had endured. Through it all, Aaron and Rose remained the heart of everything, their love the foundation upon which the entire family was built. They grew old together, their hair turning gray and their faces lining with years of laughter and sun, but their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by shared experiences and mutual respect. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and the community they had helped build, Aaron stood to make a toast. His hair was silver now, and his hands showed the wear of a lifetime of hard work, but his eyes were still the same warm whiskey color that had captured Rose's heart 3 decades before. 30 years ago, I married the woman who changed my life, Aaron said, looking at Rose with undimmed love. I thought I was helping her when we met, giving her a job and a safe place. But the truth is, she saved me just as much as I saved her. She took a lonely ranch house and made it a home. She took a solitary man and gave him a family. She took resources I had built for my own survival and showed me how to use them to help others. Rose, you are my heart, my partner, my everything. Here is to 30 more years together. Rose stood and moved to his side, their grown children smiling through tears. I came west desperate and alone, Rose said, her voice still strong despite her years. Cruel men tried to use that desperation to destroy me, but then I met a cowboy who chose to use his resources to help me instead. Aaron gave me safety when I had none, work when I needed purpose, and love when I thought I would never trust again. He showed me that goodness still exists in this world, that strength can be gentle, and that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Everything good in my life flows from the day he found me and chose kindness over cruelty. I love you, Aaron Crawford, now and always. They kissed to the cheers of their family and friends. And as Rose looked around at the legacy they had built together, not just the ranch and the prosperity, but the children and grandchildren, the community of people they had helped and who had helped them, the values they had instilled, and the example they had set, she felt a profound sense of completion. She had been desperate once, used by cruel men who saw her vulnerability as something to exploit. But a good man had seen that same desperation and chosen to help instead. Aaron had used his resources not to control her but to lift her up, to give her the space and safety to rebuild herself. And from that foundation of kindness and respect, they had built a love story that spanned decades and generations. As the sun set over the mountains that had witnessed their entire journey together, Rose leaned into Aaron's familiar embrace and smiled. This was the happy ending she had never dared hope for, the future she had thought was impossible that desperate morning when she stumbled into Gunnison. But it had become real through courage and kindness, through Aaron's goodness and her own strength, through the simple but profound choice to see each other's humanity and respond with love. The Wild West had been hard and often cruel, but it had also been the setting for this love story, this family, this life. And as Rose watched her grandchildren playing in the yard where her own children had once played, she knew that the legacy of that desperate morning and the cowboy who had chosen to help would echo through generations, a testament to the truth that even in the darkest moments, hope and love can prevail. Their story would be told by their children and their children's children, not just as a tale of survival, but as a reminder that one person's choice to help rather than harm can change everything. Aaron had used his resources to save Rose when cruel men had tried to destroy her, and from that single act of kindness had grown a love that would never die, a family that would endure, and a legacy of compassion that would ripple forward through time long after they were both gone.